The Power Factor Show with Rick, Steve, and Caleb. Episode 36. Double Tap Championships Breakdown, Part 3.
Gun Rights Radio Network has the best pro-Second Amendment, pro-gun rights podcast available on the net. The podcasts are absolutely free when subscribing using iTunes or Zune Marketplace. Or if you want, you can just listen from the website. Make sure you visit gunrightsradio.com to subscribe. Podcasting freedom, one episode at a time.
Brought to you by Safariland.
And welcome back to Power Factor. I'm Rick.
I'm Steve.
We are now going to discuss, this is part 3 of our Double Tap Championship
The final
match
part.
review. The final part, third and final part. And this covers the first 4 stages that we shot on Saturday morning. And this is when the temperatures were about 75 degrees.
It was nice.
Beautiful. We've been hydrating a little bit. We were, feeling pretty good. So at least for my part,
We
this
were all
was
tied for first place.
Yeah, this was the highlight of the match for me, these first 4 stages. So before things kind of started getting rocky. So we'll just go through these, and let's start on stage 9, the Lost Empire.
So stage 9, Lost Empire. Interesting start position on this one. Let's see, 30 rounds, 150 points, 14 paper, 2 steel. Kneeling in the start box, 1 knee on the ground, facing downrange, fingers of both hands touching top of shoe on the leg, that the knee is not touching the ground. Boy, is that explicit or what?
Yeah.
Gun loaded
Such
in holster.
that, ergo. Yeah. To wit.
Are you a lawyer?
No.
No.
I slept in a Holiday Inn.
Yeah, all right,
exactly.
okay. Gun loaded in holster, extra ammo on belt, doors closed. On signal, engage targets as they become visible from within area A only. Pop-up targets come... Oh, God, not this one. Oh,
This is a fun one.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Now, we covered... Did we
No,
cover
we
this
have not covered this.
specifically, or just kind of generally on this topic?
No, we have not talked about it at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're seeing the diagram.
Yeah,
so
they
they
are.
can see that we've got a steel target that in the upper right corner. We've got a steel target that activates 3 pop-ups.
Right. It says
disappearing
here,
targets.
It says pop-up targets come in succession and settle down are disappearing.
So it's like a ripple effect. T1 pops up and goes down. T2 pops up and goes down. T3 pops up and goes down in sequence. They don't pop up simultaneously.
Right.
So there's to an extent. I thought we talked about this already. It's like it's almost been a Bob's show.
Yeah, well, I think it was on Bob's show.
But it's a little bit of a fixed time element because you can't speed it up any. After you hit the steel, you can only shoot as fast as the 3 targets pop up. So the hit factor on this array is almost fixed. There's no way to speed it up. The one thing you could do,
30 points.
Yeah, one thing you could do, I guess, is hit the right popper, hit the left popper, then go to the 3 paper. So you could, economize.
Funny you mention that.
You could economize a little bit there on time. But really, everybody's in the same boat because after you've hit the activator, you're just at the mercy of how quickly the targets appear.
Right. Why don't we roll this and then we can discuss some of the strategies that we saw being applied.
Right. And just looking at the layout, you can see we've got 3 targets off to the right, to the right side of the door. And then we've got 2 targets through a port, 4 targets through a port, 2 targets through a port, and then you get to the array that we've just been discussing. So let's roll it here and see how I do this.
Here's your run.
So we jump up, go to the port, 2 targets. I didn't want to get too close to the port, because there's another port right there. Rather than move from one port to the other, I just put myself in one spot where I could get them both.
And the idea is, you're pretty deep into that one, the idea is kind of get yourself into a position where you can see both sets of targets from one position so you're not moving.
I throw the door open, doing a reload.
And then...
This is where I had another one of those guns.
This is your first one of
the day.
First
one of the day on the first stage.
One of the match.
Yep. So somebody who was really good could have gone ping, ping, and then got the 6 shots on paper. But as you could see, once I hit that first popper and waited for the thing to appear, I couldn't have done it any faster than I did that one element of the stage. And so that's something that we're harping on because we're going to talk later about the idea of engaging that array or not, based on hit factor and some other concerns.
Right. Okay, so we'll roll mine here and see how that goes. So I tried to be a little bit gamey here. since this was the first stage of the day, and of course you're all kind of like amped up and you want to go and you want to get to shooting and stuff like that. Unfortunately, you'll see from my score here that I had a few more deltas because you're kind of like in the hyper mode of I want to shoot, and you're not really fully paying attention to your front sight as much as you probably should, and then you shoot your one course of fire during your first stage of the day or whatever, and then you realize, oh yeah, you do need to use your front sights a little bit more than what you planned on. But so in my case here, I came over, picked the sweet spot position where I can shoot those targets, and just slight rotation, shoot these. Don't get too deep into this array here, shoot those. And then rip the door open as I'm going across so that when I get done shooting that array, the door's already ready for me to go. I did the split deal on the poppers that you were talking about. I went right popper, left popper, and then went for the disappearing targets or the pop-ups or whatever you want to call them. So let's do our times and scores here, which will lead into a stage analysis on this. So I had 1866 for my time, 21 Alpha, 4 Charlie, 5 Delta.
I had 3079, probably 3 or 4 seconds of which was clearing the malfunction.
At least.
23 Alpha, 7 Charlie.
Right. So what this gets into is that array of disappearing targets. Somebody in our squad, one of the production shooters, decided that it would be not beneficial for them to shoot the disappearing targets, not take any time to shoot them or do anything with them. You have to activate them, but they decided not to shoot them. And these disappearing targets, you're not penalized for not shooting them. You have to activate them. That's one of the requirements, but you don't have to shoot at them. So you don't get misses, you don't get failure to engage, or anything like that. You would get a failure to engage and misses if you didn't activate them, which coincidentally somebody in our squad, I think, failed to do. They failed to hit the popper or whatever to get things going and left it standing. And unfortunately, the RO scored it wrong, but that's a different story. But at any rate, so a lot of the production shooters decided that it was in their best interest to not shoot the pop-up targets and just let them go. So that's 30 points there. If you look at how much time, and we actually ended up timing it, how long it took to shoot those 3 targets, and it took roughly about 3 seconds, 3 or 4. I mean, and like you said, it's all mechanical. You can't shoot it any faster. You can't shoot it any slower. Well, you could. I mean, you could stand around for a long time, but the targets will go away. But I mean, at the rate that they're coming up and doing their thing, and it's a fairly smooth pace, it's about 3 seconds. So 30 points, 3 seconds, 10 hit factor. Okay, these production shooters are definitely not shooting it at 10 hit factor. The way, I mean, if you were going to game this, you would have to be able to say that I'm going to shoot the stage at a higher than 10 hit factor.
Well, the RO, I think, told me that up to that point in the match, the best run on that stage had been an open shooter.
Right.
And even after I calculated his hit factor, it wasn't 10.
Yeah.
So the guys who are shooting in limited production, single stack, limited 10, are... But there isn't that much difference either, because in open, he's got to shoot it at the same pace we did. But let's just assume he was quicker up to that point.
And which they would be.
Yeah,
right.
And still, the hit factor just on this array of 3 targets is higher than your hit factor on the rest of the stage. So skipping them is necessarily going to lower your score rather than raise it.
Right.
Because you've got a hit factor of 8 going, and then you skip the 3 targets that would increase your hit factor to 8.5. And it just it didn't make any sense.
No, and like you're pointing out, is that an open shooter up to that point, I mean, the open shooter is going to be slowed down by the mechanical speed of that. They can't make it go any faster. I mean, even if they can shoot faster, they can't because of the speed of the targets will not allow it. But up until that point, they can go very, very quick. Yeah. Now, it's interesting because I looked at some of the scores of the open open shooters, and Max Michel shot the match, 1 open. No surprise there. But he actually finished 3rd on this stage, and he went for the disappearing targets. The guy who won it did not go for the disappearing targets, but if you look at the stage percentages, the guy who won it gets 100%. The next guy had 99. I think Max Michel had 98 or 98. So he was right up there. I mean, the time differential is very small.
It was about a wash for them.
Right. For them, it was a wash. I mean, but clearly for everybody else, it was not a wash. You definitely should have gone for those targets. But the funny thing is kind of like the blind leading the blind, is that you would see one person do it, and then all of a sudden everybody else would decide, this is the way I need to do it. And Bob Main said when we had our interview with him is that somebody pointed out to him that you did not need to shoot those targets. You wouldn't be penalized for it. That's a true statement. But the other half of that is that, by not shooting those, you all of a sudden just threw away a whole bunch of points that you could have easily had. I mean, it was very easy points to get.
I think Bob said everybody in his squad skipped those 3 targets.
Right.
So somebody had convinced everybody that it was to their benefit to do so.
Yeah.
But if you just crunch the numbers, it would have been pretty obvious that it wasn't to the benefit of anybody that did it that way that I saw shooting it. So.
And the thing to be aware of also is that, let's say you were embedded in the squad that Max Michel was in, where these guys, some of them did it and some of them didn't do it, but these are open class shooters. You're shooting production. Their game, their speed, their hit factor is not your hit factor. Your hit factor is going to be probably a lot slower than them. So while you may see them come up with a great strategy and reasoning and explanation of why it's not beneficial for them to shoot those 3 targets, for you, you need to do the math and figure it out, is it or is it not beneficial for me to do the same thing? In this case here, it would be beneficial. So you can't look at somebody else's game and apply it to your game, or even if they're shooting the same division. I mean, if you're shooting faster or slower or whatever, maybe it is to your benefit, maybe it isn't to your benefit, but these are the things you kind of need to analyze up front in a situation like this. So.
Okay, so that was the Lost Empire.
Yeah. So, going on to the next one.
This was kind of a fun stage.
Yeah, this was a good stage. The Atlantian Guard. So, 24 rounds, 120 points, 12 paper targets, all paper. Best 2 hits on paper, standing in Area A, facing uprange, wrists above shoulders, toes touching X's on fault line. Gun is loaded and holstered, extra ammo on belt. On signal, engage all targets as they become visible from within Area A. The foam Atlantian Guards hanging from the center section of the stage. The gate at the end activates the swinger and is not range equipment failure if you do not activate the swinger. So you shot this twice, as I remember.
Yeah, my first run, they did not write the time on the score sheet. And then I think on the reshoot, I had the second of my round squirting into the magwell malfunction. So
I think we ought to watch both.
Oh, sure.
Why not?
Let's watch both.
Now, the interesting thing here is at the very end, there is a swinger that you are fairly close to and 2 barrels, I believe, on either side, and you are not left with a lot of target time that's between them. When we walked this the day before, or the afternoon before, or whatever, we realized that this is going to be a very tight, quick shot to make. But we also then realized that if you literally pick a spot out on the hill behind there where the A zone would be, and just line the gun up on that spot and get ready for it, and as soon as you see the target, just shoot there, that was the way to do this thing. To make it even easier, it turned out that the ribs on the barrel, the lateral lines, happened to be right exactly where you needed to be. So all we needed to do was come up, look at the barrel, see where those lines were, put the gun there, and shoot.
And I think on the first run, I did it pretty well. But then on the second run, I think I was flustered by the malfunction and started chasing the thing.
Yeah.
And I think I probably put one through the barrel or something.
There were a lot of people who were shooting this as a bang first swing, bang second swing. So.
Which isn't a bad way to shoot it.
No,
really.
No.
I mean, it's not the fastest way to shoot it, but it's like Steve said.
It beats throwing 2 rounds and getting a mic.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, you couldn't see the target except for like the middle. Well, you'll be able to see it.
Yeah,
you'll be able to see it. You had to kind of anticipate it arriving because it would completely disappear behind the barrels on both ends of the swing.
Right. So let's look at your first run here.
Bye.
Reload. Reload.
Through the gate. So yeah, you did fire 2 there. So you can see there that thing is actually was a good stopping point there where you can see the target right in the middle.
Yeah.
Now you apparently had a little what pushed the reshoot on this stage is that they didn't record your time.
They didn't record the time on the score sheet, and so after I'd shot, I got to reshoot it on that basis. Once the score sheet's been signed, it's nothing you can do. You can't go back. So I had to reshoot the stage.
However, there was an interesting thing leading up to that is that you apparently, because the stage had been shot numerous times and the course there was sandy or whatever, is that you couldn't really feel where the boundary was, that you couldn't tell like when you were in or when you were out. One of the requirements is that the wood that's placed down, I think, has to be like 3/4 of an inch or whatever above the surface so that you can kind of feel it with your feet to know when you're in versus when you're out. But in this case here, because of the sand that was there, it kind of got pushed up against it. So it
was that case on a number of stages.
Right.
I mean, there was one stage where I actually asked, it might have been this one, I asked the guy, would you please sweep the sand away from the fault line so I can feel it with my toe? Because I think I fired 6 shots outside the shooting area on this first run.
Could be.
And then on the reshoot, I managed to get that part of it right.
Yeah. So let's look at your reshoot.
But then, of course, I have the malfunction, so I guess I'm still way ahead on the on the penalty phase of that.
Slap him out of the way.
Slap! There's your... Yeah. I actually got out of that one pretty quickly. Looked pretty happy with that run.
Yeah.
Darn it, I said.
Yeah. I'm sure that's what you said.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, the reshoot certainly went better than the first one just because I didn't have the foot faults. But
you did have the gun jam.
Did have the gun jam, but I was happy that I got the reshoot because my reshoot score was much better.
Then also you had 3 rounds fired in the swing, or you had the 2 in the first pass, and then 1 extra kind of insurance to do. So
that was a mediocre run. I was glad to get out of it with what I got. So that's a good summary of that one.
So in my case here, I think this is another one where I decided that the best way for me to start shooting this was to turn again counterclockwise for me, which is kind of foreign to what I'm normally used to doing, and engaging that first target, which would be on your right as you're facing downrange. And again, this gets into one of those situations where you need to really be careful to make sure and do your complete turn before you draw the gun. I think I was probably actually pretty close to it. I guess we'll see in the video just exactly how close I was. But this course for me actually turned out to be pretty good. I was somewhat aggressive on it. I think I had like a 2nd or 3rd overall and limited on this stage, so it worked out pretty good. So let's take a look at it real quick.
Steve's used to forcing his way through a crowd of dummies.
Yeah, that's it. Through the gate and 2 really quick on that. So that worked out good. That was a good run. For me, I thought that was a really good run. Worked out well.
So what was the happy totals on that one?
Well, the happy totals for me on that one were 1481 for my time, 20 Alpha 4 Charlie.
I was 2191, 18 Alpha 6 Charlie.
Right. Do you have your first? I guess you wouldn't have your first score sheet. So you don't really know. Yeah.
No. I'm surprised I have any of them after the anyway.
After the freak out or
after the DQ.
Oh yeah,
because DQ that we alluded to in I think in a previous episode was as a result of having 2 score sheets from the stage.
Proposed DQ,
yeah. They apparently when the second score sheet came in, there was some confusion about it, and so that's why I was DQ'd temporarily.
Apparently, every time they get 2 score sheets, they just DQ the shooter.
Yeah, I'm not really sure the reasoning on that or how it turned out that way, but anyway. So that stage, even with the malfunction, I was happy with how that one turned out.
Right.
Because the alternative was certainly grim.
Okay, stage 11, save the turtles. It's the infamous amoeba targets or turtle targets, or in IPSC speak, the classic target. So 28 rounds, 140 points, 13 IPSC paper, 2 steel. Standing outside area A, palms on knees. Heels touching the X's on the fault line, facing down range, gun loaded in holster, extra ammo on belt, on signal engage targets as they become visible from within area A only.
Now, is this one where there's like 18 rounds through the center position?
Yeah, well, there could be. There was a stage, I think this is that stage.
2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, 12. Is that from here?
Sure.
So it's like 12
Yeah,
12 rounds through a single opening in the wall, but the way the shooting area was kind of set back from that port, you couldn't see all 6 targets from one spot. And so the rules say you can't have more than 8 rounds required from a single view
or position.
So even though there's a single port through which you're going to fire 12 rounds, no more than 8 of them are visible without having to shuffle your feet around to a different perspective through that port.
But it's still the same view.
Well, nowhere where I stood could I shoot more than 8 shots.
Well, the thing is that it says single position or view, which means basically from that location there.
Right.
Even though you could step a foot to the left and go, it's a new position, but it's
you had to step to the left.
Right, you did have to move. But
somebody decided it was legal.
Its position. Well, actually, after talking to Amadon about this, his point was that the way they looked at it on paper, they thought that these two. This is going to be difficult for you guys to see, but the two flyer arrays that are outside the first 6 on either side, which make up 2 targets here. They thought that these could possibly be seen around the edge or from within the inside area here.
From the middle, or 6 actually through the middle.
But in reality, when it's down on the ground, this happens a lot actually in courses of fire. This is probably really nothing unusual. That all these stages, again, this is a level 2 match, and the stages have to be approved by the NROI, and we talked about that before in my episode that I did on putting together a level 2 match. But the problem is that you show NROI the stages and they look at them and they make assumptions about what they're seeing and they think it looks legal, and then the match organizers put it on the ground and it isn't exactly the way the course looked like when the NROI looked at it, and all of a sudden a legal stage turns into an illegal stage. So the thing is with these types of targets is that you can have a situation where you can shoot a target from, let's say, 2 different locations, either one location or another location, and it may may result in firing more than 8 rounds from that position. But because of the fact that it's viewable from 2 different locations, kind of allows you to get around that whole entire thing. But in this case here, it was clearly, there was no way around it. There was much more than 8 down the middle. So let's take a look at your run.
Oh, I missed the first part of it.
Yeah, I was a little slow on the camera.
That's all right.
Yeah, it's definitely 6 on the right, 6 on the left, and that's all you can see.
Yeah. And again, just another little note on that. Since you start in the middle, you're going to make a short run to one side and a long run around to the other side. So I made the short one to my right so that I could reload with the muzzle pointed down range as I made the long run around to the left side.
And for a lefty shooter, going right to left is a lot easier than going right to left, so you can pretty much guess which way I went. I started in the middle, went left, then to the right. So. Yeah.
Okay, so let's see Steve do it now.
I didn't have very particularly good hits in this stage. I don't know why. Maybe it's the amoebas. A little slow through there.
You didn't reload, did you?
Well, there's a bag in the ground, so I think I
somewhere.
did.
You reloaded somewhere.
My reload is so fast, you didn't see it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think you just photoshopped that magazine.
Right, yeah, I'll take that magazine out. Yeah. So, yeah, it's 28 rounds, so I definitely would have needed to reload.
What are the happy totals?
So I have 1634, 20 Alpha, 4 Charlie, 4 Delta.
1807, 21 Alpha, 8 Charlie.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I really got burned here by points more than anything. My time was not great, but it wasn't horrible. But I just threw down way too many points in that thing. So, okay. So next stage is Manta Ray, stage 12. This is the last stage that we shot before lunch. I think at this point we were feeling pretty good. We were moving a little bit faster than normal. I think, or faster than planned, which was good. So things were going, at least I thought, going fairly well here. But at any rate. 22 points, 22 rounds, 110 points, 10 IPSC, 2 steel. Standing in Area A, palms on X's of walls, gun loaded and holstered, extra ammo on belt, windows closed, on signal, engage targets as they become visible from within Area A only. So they have 2 ports in this stage with little windows/doors in them that you got to knock open. I think they were Velcroed shut or something, so you needed to kind of forcefully hit them open. If you didn't hit them hard enough, they wouldn't open. I remember doing that once while doing my walkthrough. One thing that was a little bit of a concern here, at least from a right-handed shooter, probably not so much from a left-handed shooter, is that you start on the right-hand side, obviously, where the X's are here, as you can see in the diagram. And then you need to move over to the left-hand side, or at least that's the way I chose to shoot it, and I had to reload coming in there. And for a right-handed shooter, in this case, backing up, doing a reload is just asking for all sorts of problems in terms of where the muzzle's pointed at. Because your body wants to turn, the gun wants to crank, and you want to reload, and it can just result in bad stuff happening here. From your standpoint, I'm sure you had to do a reload there also, but at least it was to your favorable side that the gun is going to be pointed downrange. It's business as usual for you.
Yeah. Sometimes even the blind squirrel gets the nut. So yeah.
So okay, let's take a look at your run here. Run. Oh yeah, you took that popper from the outside edge there. That's interesting. Right,
which was probably kind of a lefty-only thing. I don't know that a right-handed,
or it could be because of mag. Well,
it was right and tight to the wall, and so a right-handed shooter would really have a hard time. I mean, it's not saying it didn't happen, but I mean, I saw a lot of people shoot it. And most people took that steel through the port.
Right. And through the port there, you had 3 paper and 2 steel, so that's 8 rounds. You had really no room to. Yeah, I guess it's interesting because from the left-hand side, you had the 3 paper, and then you decided to pick up the 1 steel, so you kind of built in a safety margin there by doing it around the left-hand edge as opposed to down the middle. Because if you missed once, you've got 1 round and you're at slide lock. On the left-hand side, you could miss a couple times and be okay.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm very conscious of that. Yeah. I mean,
you almost have to because of the fact of the way you're shooting in single stack. You have to, start looking at all this stuff going. It's ammo management. And,
if I've got an array of 8 or 9 rounds, 8 rounds, I want 9 in the gun. I mean, I never want to have a same number of rounds. I don't want to force a slide lock reload or an extra reload because I don't have enough rounds. So I try to always, pick up a shot. Like in that case, add the steel to the outside array.
Right.
So then I've got an extra round on both arrays.
Right.
So
yeah. Okay, so in my run here, I initially got myself pushed off very far to the right. I remember doing that so that I didn't have a whole lot of movement to get going here, and immediately knocked the window open on the start signal to get things going here so that when I came back to the port, it was already open and ready for me to go. So you can see here I'm pushed off to the right, knock the port open just like you did, and then shoot while backing up, getting out, and then do my reload, kind of cranked up here, knock that port open so that when I come back to it, it's ready to go. I can do anything when I get there. So felt pretty good about that stage or that run. It was to me that was a kind of a fun stage.
And that was like something we would see at a local match.
Yeah,
I mean nothing, but still
nothing fancy, but just kind of fun. It's speed with steel, and kind of doing some of the fun gamey stuff of knocking windows open before you get there, or shooting while backing up, or pushing yourself out of a start position. I mean, yes, you can stand right in front of the X's, or you can stand way up to the edge and still have your hands on the X's and do all that stuff. So, at any rate,
12:38,
18 Alpha 4 Charlie.
14:35, 14 Alpha 8 Charlie.
You had a really fast run on that thing.
I did pretty well on that one.
Yeah.
So how'd you do on the chronograph, Steve?
It's funny because I just saw the chronograph stage come up here.
Now, did they weigh the bullets, or did they just believe
They weighed them.
They did? Okay.
Yeah. Well,
because I noticed yours says 180 and mine says 200.
No, they must be going off declared weight. Because in reality, my bullet weighs, I found out at the Northwest Challenge, 182.3. And my velocity was 957. That ends up being the same velocity to the Northwest Challenge. I think it was like a 175 or so power factor. So I was well above the declared power factor, and part of that could have been the heat.
Mine was 200 at 853, which is probably 171.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Both of us made major.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than shooting a match.
It was one of
this
this was a match where I had loaded a bunch of ammo and had function fired a few of them and chronoed them, but not very many of them, like 5 or 10 rounds. I've been having some really erratic velocities. I was generally making major everywhere I went, but it would be, with like a 90 foot per second extreme spread. So I'd have, one round would be, 185, one would be 170, and the other one would be like 155. And I'd be like going, oh, come on. And I'd always be at like 168, but I was bumping my powder charge up, and my velocities weren't going up. And so then a friend suggested, well, maybe you need, instead of continuing to bump your powder charge, but you shorten your overall length and reduce your powder charge. And I was against it. It's these weird hollow base bullets, and there apparently is something weird about what the hollow base does to the volume of the case.
Obviously increases it.
So I was actually, yes, it does.
Yeah.
But if you have a bullet of given weight, loaded to a certain overall length, and one has a plain base and one has a hollow base, isn't more of the bullet going to be inside the case?
Not if you're loading it to the same overall length. Oh, I'm sorry. I see what you're saying.
Because you're loading it to the same overall length.
Yeah.
So anyway, intuitively, I didn't think it was going to work, but I was getting the same average velocities with 4.3 grains and much more consistent velocities at the shorter overall length than I had been getting with 4.5 grains. So this was my first chance to fail chrono at a major match with my new favorite load. And
But you actually made it very well.
Yeah, I did. So that was fun.
Worked out good.
Made me very happy.
Okay, so that wraps it up. That's the whole entire Double Tap Championship match. We had a good time. It was rather warm. It's still rather warm down in Texas from what
my understanding. Yeah, we left the heat down there.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because when we got down there, it was 105, and we were thinking, my God, this is hot. And now it's like 110 every day down in Dallas and 113 or whatever in Wichita Falls every day. So I think Bob May mentioned the other day that they've had like 35 days straight or something or other of plus 100 degree temperatures every day. So, and what's the temperature up here today, Rick?
Okay, I think we've had 150 straight days of higher than 45 degrees.
Yeah, that's true. We've had that.
Yeah, it's just
nice.
Well, up until last weekend, our summer was being calculated in how many minutes we'd had over 80 degrees. And through, like, I think the last week in August, we'd had like 38 minutes. Last weekend of July, the 38 minutes of summer.
Right.
And now we've had, like, I think 700 minutes of summer.
And summer was defined as any temperature over 80 degrees.
Yeah.
So we're still not. Yeah, it's been 75 to 78. Yeah. So at any rate, beats 100.
Yep.
Anyway. Okay. So any questions or any comments? You can send us an email at. What the heck is it? PowerFactorShow@gmail.com.
No. Oh, that's the email.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Email PowerFactorShow@gmail.com, or you can hit the website at PowerFactorShow.com.
Exactly.
Or you can hit the Facebook webpage at. Well, let me see if I can get this right. Facebook.com/PowerFactorShow. We'll see if that's right. Anyway.
So until next time.
Oh yeah, hey, leave us feedback either there or also on iTunes. That'd be great. Also, we can bump the iTunes comments up. So. All right. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.